What would you do if you knew how to save the planet from climate change? There are basically three types of climate films. Type 1 examines the problem. Type 2 looks at what we are doing about it. And Type 3 looks at what we would need to do to solve the entire problem at the lowest cost to society. No one has ever created a Type 3 film, possibly because the size of the problem and the size of the solution are difficult to comprehend. It is our goal to present the first Type 3 climate film, and do so in the most humane and responsible way possible. Many people are tired of hearing about climate change. For the most part, they have one simple question: how much does it cost to fix this? We will provide an estimate and explain how it was derived. Several decades ago, climate scientists stated we need to avoid a 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature increase relative to 150 years ago. This implies we are to crest at 1.5 degrees and then drop back down. Instead, we breached 1.5 degrees in 2023 and we are not cresting. Instead, we are warming rapidly. Also, carbon dioxide emissions would need to be close to zero at the point of cresting to cause global temperatures to decrease. Instead, actual emissions are at their highest level and are increasing. In other words, our society failed to transition to a green economy. It's even worse than that. We never were going to succeed. To understand why, we must look at this through the lens of economics. Harm comes from carbon dioxide emitted by 8 billion people. One person's own carbon dioxide is too small to be relevant. Therefore, each person does not benefit if they reduce their own emissions. Instead, each person wants the other 8 billion people to reduce. In economics, this is referred to as a prisoner's dilemma problem. And according to economic theory, our fundamental strategy of using social pressure to solve the problem was wrong from the start. One can look at decarbonization data to get a better sense of this. This graph shows the percentage of global energy that does not emit carbon dioxide. This is all energy, not just electricity. And this is the entire world, not just one nation. As one can see, this has only increased from 14% to 18% over the past decade. At this pace, achieving full decarbonization would take approximately 200 years, far too long to solve the climate problem. We can also look at the US, Europe, and China. The United States is on track to decarbonize over 250 years, Europe over 175 years, and China over 100 years. These graphs tell us social pressure has not and will not solve the climate problem. The only way to transition to a green economy over several decades is to enact laws that require decarbonization. The problem is, we would have had to enact these 30 years ago to get to zero emissions today, to cause global temperatures to crest at 1.5 and drop back down. Put differently, to solve the climate problem with carbon dioxide reduction, we would have had to enact decarbonization laws 30 years ago, which we did not do. Okay, so now what? Carbon dioxide is no longer our biggest problem. Instead, our biggest problem is acceleration. This is when the rate of change of a system increases over time. For example, sea levels rose 0.3 meters over the previous 100 years, and they are expected to rise 10 times more than that over the next 100 years. Acceleration is caused by self-reinforcing feedback loops that amplify existing forces. Unfortunately, we are currently observing acceleration in thawing permafrost, ocean current reduction, melting sea ice, and global warming itself. Acceleration is observed with actual measurements, so we know it is real. Due to acceleration, the next 30 years will see significantly more change than the previous 30 years. And a rapidly changing planet is a bad planet, since it means we have less time to adjust. This is why scientists advised us several decades ago to avoid 1.5. Unfortunately, we are past the point where reducing carbon dioxide emissions will fix this. The acceleration problem is too great. Okay, if carbon dioxide reduction was Plan A, what is Plan B? Plan B is we change the atmosphere slightly to reflect more sunlight back into outer space. This would cool the planet slightly and stop acceleration. What happens if we don't do Plan B? What is Plan C? Plan C is we take climate change on the chin and experience dramatic changes over the next 30 years. This would involve food shortages, mass migration, etc. And dealing with this is costly. Do we have other options? Yes. However, they are prohibitively expensive. So no, we don't have other options. In summary, Plan A will no longer fix this, and we are now looking at Plans B and C, neither of which are popular. Also, Plan B requires billions of dollars of R&D over the next 10 years, which we are currently not doing. Our society is facing two massive undertakings. One is carbon dioxide emissions reduction, and the other is reflecting sunlight. Reducing carbon dioxide emissions would be done by each nation, and reflecting sunlight would be done by multiple nations since it involves the entire planet, not just sunlight above one nation. In other words, each nation needs a decarbonisation plan, and all nations together need a global climate plan that involves reflecting sunlight. A plan would specify what needs to be done each year, the cost, and new laws that would drive it forward. Currently, plans do not exist. However, a website that creates plans could be developed. We'll talk more about this in our film. All of this might seem complicated and overwhelming. This begs the question, can we have someone take care of this? I mean, all of this. Currently, no one feels responsible for solving the entire problem, and that is part of the problem. In theory, a new laboratory could be set up to tackle the climate problem. Transitioning to a green economy is likely to cost $100 trillion globally over several decades. Therefore, spending something like $100 billion on a new lab to save trillions is reasonable. Let's run some numbers to get a better sense of this. If $100 billion was spent over 5 years, it would cost $20 billion each year. And if $500,000 was spent per technical person, this would employ 40,000 scientists and engineers. This goes way beyond what one university could handle. Therefore, money would need to flow toward many organizations. An example mission statement might be, save the planet from climate change at the lowest cost to society. In theory, faculty at universities could help set this up. Yet what might a new lab do to save us from our changing planet? We'll talk more about this in our film. In summary, our current strategy is flawed in multiple ways. 1. A plan to block runaway climate change does not exist. 2. National decarbonisation laws are missing. 3. Policy-making tools are needed. And 4. There is no mechanism that causes us to favour the lowest cost approach. All of this might sound terrible, and it is. However, it can be fixed using basic principles of science, engineering, and economics. And in theory, this can be placed on the shoulders of one R&D laboratory that is tasked with solving the entire problem. We'll explain this further as we explore a plan to save the planet from climate change.